That was very nice. And none of us got confused. That's a big step for me. All right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance yet again. And Carl, since you're tired, let's do this.
Yeah. Did you just jump it? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where, Carl? All right. Tonight is a work session. So essentially, this is a meeting where we'll spend some time hearing from the staff, talking specifically about budget items. The two that we'll be discussing today are the fire and EMS funds, along with the waste fund. Exciting stuff, but let's dig into it. Eddie, do you want to kick the ball first?
Yeah, definitely. So the first fund we'll talk about is fire. So I worked with fiscal office and with the fire department to get a overall analysis, a breakdown, just so you can have a baseline for going into next year, as well as having an understanding, kind of looking into the future. So what we'll do is we'll just do a run through, basic breakdown. Some of this information you're probably already going to be familiar with, but we'll go through kind of what the status of the fund is. And then toward the end, we'll open it up for Chief Wright and myself, basically to kind of get a couple of answers from you guys as far as what kind of direction and tact you want to take on a couple different items. So ultimately, the Fire Fund 2111 is the primary fund, and then they also have there's also an EMS fund 2281. As you're aware, the Fire Fund is funded primarily through voter approved property tax millage. So that's pretty locked in within a pretty determined bound. The EMS fund is supported by billing for service. Those revenues tend to be between 391 and 417,000 on average between 2022 and 2025. And of course, those fluctuate due to demand and service utilization. But primarily, fire is covered by that 2111 voted levy millage. As you can see, the overall composition, 80% is that voted millage. EMS billing is about 10.8%. And then other state receipts and those sorts of, and contract account for just around a little over 8%. So ultimately, we anticipate that revenues from 2027 onward are projected around 3.439 million for the fire fund. We've just made, so for the purposes of creating some projections, we have to make some different assumptions. We know that that number is probably not going to be exact year to year, but just for the purposes of making some projections out, these are some of the assumptions that we've been making. Let's see here. As far as other highlights, it's anticipated that EMS billing revenues forecasted at 1% for these funds. However, we do anticipate growth due to population and new services and commercial development coming on board, that we're going to see growth in the demand for EMS. We're just not, we're not quite exactly sure how much. This is just a graph for Mr. Freeman. It's for everybody. But as you can see, the orange is the fire fund, the blue is the EMS. It shows actual and then projected. As you can see, we anticipate those funds are going to stay pretty much just a hair under 4 million in totality going into the future. And they remain pretty stable, barring any additional levy funds coming online.
Well, and I just want to point out real quick, in 24, you saw that spike. If you're wondering why that's higher, that was from the $1 million for the fire truck that came in and went back out.
Okay. Yeah. And to that point, I know that you guys are mostly aware of this, but, and going into the next slide, salary and fringe are 88% of the cost burden for the fire department. But those spikes in major capital expenses are not, they're to be expected within reason with the fire department as well, because they have a lot of very expensive equipment. They take up a lot of space and those sorts of things. So those types of things can come up periodically, where a new fire engine or an ambulance or things like that come into play. So of course, there's margin here that we're trying to work within so we want to be precise, but then again, you might have $1 million expense. So those, I know you guys are aware of those types of things. Some of the other key components to keep in mind as we look into the future here, there are facility needs in Amelia. We've discussed that. We've gone through some facility analysis as well. There's also needs here in the current facility as well. There's definitely anticipated additional staff that are going to be needed, even just maintaining the existing facilities that we have right now. And of course, the current union contract expires at the end of December 2028. So the expenses going forward, what we did is we projected, and this shows the 3% projection. So from this perspective, we took expenses and anticipated a 3% growth rate. We know for sure that there's going to be growth in inflation and in population as well. Largest expenditures, of course, are going to remain salary and fringe. So when we did these projections, and you have the numbers in the back of your packet, we did two different cost assumptions. One was a 4% and the other was a 3%. We also set a recommended minimum reserve threshold of $1.725 million, which is likely to be crossed in 2028 for either a 3 or a 4% cost escalator. And that assumes $3.4 million in revenue from 2027 onward. And you can see the actual balances on the bottom of your screen here and in your report. So at a 3% cost assumption escalation, the last year of full positive balance will be 2030 for a 3%. Now, of course, keep in mind, that would mean we would go all the way through 2030. And at the end of the year, you'd have $135,000 sitting there. And that keep in mind, that's a tenth of an ambulance or a tenth of an engine, for instance. And that would mean going into 2031, you effectively have nothing. And then for a 4% cost escalator, the last full year would be 2029, making just under these particular assumptions, which is pretty much flat revenue, and then 3 and 4% growth rates and expenses. This is just a graphic reiterating. The red line there is the negative balance threshold, which you can see being crossed in either 2030 or 2029. Just touching on the EMS fund very quickly, it's projected to remain relatively stable with limited revenue and expenditures. Even assuming a 1% revenue growth and a 3% expenditure growth, you see it'll continue to grow. It has a pretty healthy balance, relatively speaking, to how much it is actually taxed and utilized. But again, that fund has to be used for EMS specific expenditures. It cannot be used for other broader fire expenditures as well. And Chief Wright can speak a little bit more to this. But if you're so inclined, but EMS revenue is tied directly to Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement policies, and those are subject to change due to federal and healthcare policies. So as far as next steps go, there's a couple of different work items that we'd love to get your guys' opinion and feedback on. And it predominantly pertains to setting any sort of highlights that you have or concerns that you have for starting into the new budget for next year on a short-term basis, but then also simultaneously setting the trajectory for what expectations will be from a levy perspective, operational need perspective, and facility planning perspective. And any feedback that we get from you guys will help us better plan and bring back a more cohesive plan for you guys to really start trying to hit those targets that you're looking for as we move forward. So we're effectively requesting direction in regards to long-term funding and levy planning. At this point, it would most likely be advantageous, conservatively speaking, to get a levy on the ballot prior to 2028. That's just staff's perspective, looking at these frozen numbers on a piece of paper, so to speak. You guys will obviously have your own opinions on that. There's other supplemental things that staff can do to be perhaps look into or address, such as reviewing and updating service fees where possible, evaluate EMS billing practices, assessing contractual agreements, and exploring capital funding strategies as well. But of course, another kind of a major thing, which we don't expect to answer every question in the world tonight, but big questions pertain to service delivery in Amelia and further east, how this board would like to proceed. And of course, the other piece with that, we say facility, but there's also going to be operational needs as we open up that conversation as well. And so ultimately here, I laid out staff request your feedback and policy direction regarding the following items, but can open up the floor. And of course, if Craig has any questions, we're here to help facilitate anything that you might have.
You guys did a really nice job on this. This is really good. Thank you.
Sure.
Just to clarify a little bit with the fund balance and when we start to kind of essentially spend in the negative, we have I like the graph that you put up, maybe more than Alan. I don't know how much Alan likes it, but I like it a lot. And I like the lines, the 6-month balance alert, and then the red line where you actually start to spend, you start to get into a negative fund balance. But there could be a third line there where we actually start to spend at a higher rate than we take in, right? But that's happening, it looks like next year based off of what I can tell, because our fund balance starts to drop starting in 2027, right? So we're going to be spending more than we're taking in starting next year.
So going back to 15, when we did the last levy, that was the strategy that the board at the time chose, was to go with the amount to front load the levy to build up the reserve, knowing that over time we would start spending more than we were bringing in. And that should have occurred in like 22 or 23, depending on expenses. So with, I think, some of our purchasing policy and diligence and grant funding, the one-time bump from Amelia, like we've stretched that, a few years beyond, we're kind of ahead of the curve where we should have been. We have a healthy fund balance, but yes, we'll start spending more than we're bringing in.
Well, and we also have, when is the contract due with the firefighters?
28.
So that's going to be 3 to 5 to 7, whatever we negotiate, hit against expenditure. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
I think one of the other factors we're facing, just like everybody, is just cost escalation is just out of control.
Yeah.
But we're seeing it, I think, more substantially than some industries with our equipment and medications. And the fire truck that went from 570,000 to $1 million in a few years. The other thing that we're starting to battle is 36% of our runs. I take that back. We've had a 36% increase in runs in the last 10-year period. And last year alone, 64.6% of our run volume was kind of in the Amelia corridor, not specifically the former village, but the 125 corridor, Amelia, Walmart, that area.
Right.
So it's a huge bulk of our runs that's not really close to either station. And we're literally running the wheels off of our fleet, which we're seeing now in $8,000 turbo repairs and $60,000 engine repairs. And so our maintenance costs are exponentially increasing. Some of it, I think, before was hidden a little bit better, because when we had our own mechanic, that number was more buried in salaries and operating supplies. And now that those costs are being done by a third party, we're realizing that a little bit more than we did before, but costs are definitely going up on maintenance of the fleet.
Right. And cost of the fleet's going up. There's a couple of other roadblocks not roadblocks, but potential wrinkles in our budget to be mindful of. Is one, the one that you always hear me gripe about, which is the loss of property tax. So if that goes away, then we have nothing. So a strategy associated with what do we do if we wake up on election night or election day and we find out there's no longer a property tax to pay for any of this. So having that strategy in place needs to be there. Then we also have something that's lurking on the periphery, which is there's been a relatively robust discussion in New Richmond about dissolving New Richmond. And that has little to do with us, except for the fact that if New Richmond dissolves, it goes into Ohio Township. and who does the fire service for Ohio Township. So we're going to have to be mindful of if suddenly we get 1,200 new residents, well, we don't get the 1,200 new residents, we get 1,200 new people that need fire service. So that's something I think we need to put on, put on our horizon to keep an eye on. As far as the time of the levy, I mean, here we are, we're in 26, the potential of doing a levy in 27 or 28. That's what we're contemplating. We didn't want to get caught flat-footed or behind. So what would you recommend that we do in order to obviously not have that happen, but levy wise? I mean, we're a little early for that, so there's not a lot we can do as far as going to the auditor's office. But what are your thoughts? How would you see that shaping up? What would you have us do in the very near term? Because it sounds like 27 is probably the witching hour, right?
One other thing to add to that too, this does not include any kind of major building upgrades or anything, right?
Correct.
So that whether or not you're going to do that may affect your answer a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think to that point, at least for me, sorry, Eddie, I think the future levy is somewhat of an answer that I and we need from the board. I mean, if there's serious consideration of potentially trying to do something up in the Amelia area to reduce response times, help the cars, or the vehicles, that's a huge factor in the levy and what those amounts are, whether it's debt service, vehicles to supply it, staffing, or if you're just looking at kind of maintaining the status quo as we've done for the last several years and covering it from the facilities we have, I think that's a much different ask.
I think that from my perspective, I think that we almost need to put a pin in the discussion until we know whether or not we're going to have property taxes.
Yeah.
Because this year is going to be the determinant. I mean, if that issue doesn't get on the ballot, the trashing of the property tax, if that doesn't get on the ballot, that changes a lot of other things. So we can have a more complete discussion about what our strategy is. If that does get on it, then we have to see how things progress. But if I could make a suggestion, and maybe this is something that we need to discuss as the will of the board, I do think we need to revisit the issue of talking to some of our business folks along the 125 corridor about joint economic development districts, and getting those in place now, so that we can head off the potential crisis of losing property tax. I think Kroger would be a prime example of a company that should be willing to do a JED with us, given the fact that, how often are the police cars up there? How often are you up there? Walmart certainly would be another that I would suggest. And then, of course, our new friends at the nursing home, because I know you guys are going to be there a lot. So perhaps maybe that's something that we would add to the recommendations of the staff, because if we could get those in place and start to get a sense, actually, it would be nice to actually, before all of that, see if somebody could run some numbers and say, this is how much it could generate if we had a JED with 4 or 5 large businesses in that in that corridor. And then we could have a discussion about telling the staff to go forward and try to negotiate those JEDs in advance. Something we can get done, fairly soon.
I think
those are good ideas. In relation to the building, I mean, honestly, so I like the detail. I like the idea of the JED. I agree with you that with the building thing, we're not really sure. You got the property tax thing, you're up in the air. But I think codifying some sort of broader, strategy nonetheless, based on the information we have, and then knowing that we may have to deviate from it. But honestly, with the business, with the building expansion, the numbers that we got and the price tags on that, the fact that the police levy barely passed, I think that probably going for a big building expansion anytime in the next 5 to 10 years is probably just not feasible.
I would think not.
So we may want to consider going ahead and budgeting for some upgrades to our current facilities when we consider when we're going to go for the next police levy and
Right.
or fire levy rather.
Now, I think along those lines, trying to remodel this building and fixing the needs at this building, we can take some funds out of the Prestwick TIFs and utilize them for upgrades here. So, certainly not building, there's not going to be enough revenue to build a new building, but there could be enough revenue there to help us at least fix up these, if that makes any sense. And then we can stay within budget and yet still, maintain the building as it should be maintained. So we could move forward with that within the next few months and put that on an agenda. Do you want to add that to?
I think it's a
something?
good idea. As much as as much as I did like the idea of putting in a second location, and I would like to increase the service times in the village of Amelia and stuff, but we can only work with what we can work with.
Right.
And we can only do what the taxpayers are willing to go for.
Right.
And they just showed us they we're willing to go for a whole lot in the police levy. So
Yeah, we heard that loud and clear.
yeah, so I don't want it to be misconstrued that I don't think it's a good idea at some point to put another location closer to the village in order to increase response times, but it's just not feasible.
Right. I think it's almost a necessity to get something up in that corridor. But what, where, how large, how much money we've got to spend right now, we probably need to be focused on how do we maintain the system, the program as it is, expanding it so that it survives and provides the level of service that we can get to the people as best we can. Then move to that next layer. But then again, if you end up getting a JED put in place and the JED remains in place, you could use some of those funds to actually offset a cost, the construction of a building in that area if property taxes remain.
We also have the Walmart TIF to
Yeah,
contribute
cracking
to.
to that, right?
And I think as a discussion point, just so you're aware, I did pull it and look, the Ohio Township contract doesn't expire until I think 2032. So that's still a little bit of ways away, but I think regardless of a new facility or not, there's definitely needs here. Friday during the rain, like we had water running and light fixtures in our kitchen.
Right.
So service guys were great. They were in the rain trying to do what they could. They were back up today, looking at flashing and stuff around the kitchen hood vent to try to see. But there's definitely some things here that need to be addressed.
Right.
I think it would be an okay idea maybe to go ahead and chunk in some of those extra costs with the roof and the things that we know. I wouldn't get too extravagant, big screen TVs or anything, not that you want to do that, but like the necessities that we're going to need to get by for the next, because I think you're right about the JED and things, and we could be surprised on the pleasant end that where we have more money than we thought we would have in order to do a new facility. And we don't want to have sunk a ton of money into this one if that comes to fruition in 5 years or something. So I think it would be helpful for the board to add some additional costs onto what you've already projected for some basic building upgrades here in order to make sure it's functional. And then let us know that in combination with your operating expenses, what would your recommendation for when to go for a levy would be?
And we also have to think about what would be the millage. What rate are we looking at? Which actually I think bleeds right into our next topic, which is the waste levy.
But here's my question is that when Richmond may change, we have those people. What is the general growth right now towards that Amelia area that say it's 5 years from now or 6 years from now, we will need a new building because we just can't, we've got to do what we got to do here first. But if it's growing and the Richmond changes, then the necessity for something may be faster than we are prepared to do.
It could be, but we're under contract just for the fire and EMS for New Richmond. And the second thing is that there's not going to be a whole lot of growth in Amelia if we don't approve it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the next big box neighborhood that comes in that doesn't have the infrastructure and the streets and the things to support it, you know, well, and where we're at with our service aspect of things,
Right.
it should be looked at. I'm not saying approved or not approved. All I'm saying is we should really give it its proper consideration if something
Yeah.
comes down.
Yeah, but see, your point is, I mean, about that New Richmond issue, that is a serious concern. I mean, if that were to come to fruition, you would then pick up a tremendous amount of territory. And I don't know, we are bound by contract through, as you said, 2031. So now Ohio Township goes from being Ohio Township to being Ohio Township. And, you know, so that's something I think we need to be mindful of. And, you know, because that contract only pays a certain amount. It doesn't, I mean, it doesn't go up based on the number of people that live there. And we certainly don't get additional revenue based on each of those homes because it's not taxable. It is a contract. So it is, they pay us X amount. And that doesn't go up based on whether or not there's 5,000 people in Ohio Township or 6,500 people.
No, the
in
increase
Ohio
is
Township.
based on the federal CPI, which historically has been very, very
When was the contract written? When did we enter into that contract?
2000 and late 2001. I think it went effect January of 2002.
That's an interesting way to enter a contract because the trustees in Ohio Township could just approve more development. It could go in and we could be shouldering the burden for the fire and EMS without any increased revenue.
Right. But it is tied, as Chief just said, it is tied to the consumer price index. It does index up and down, but
Right.
in that particular neighborhood, it doesn't particularly jump. So you're not seeing that, you know, as it does rise, it doesn't rise by a tremendous amount.
And we do bill all Ohio Township residents at the non-resident rate for EMS billing for ambulance service.
Right.
Which
But
still isn't a huge amount. I
No.
mean, we don't make a tremendous amount of runs in Ohio Township.
then, like I said, then you've got the territory, you know, now we've got, instead of having, how many square miles you figure we're running in Ohio Township right now?
What's Pierce? 26.
26.
I think we've got 12 or so that we're covering.
And let's just arguably say New Richmond is 7 more.
Well, I think the difference is I think Ohio Township, our portion, I think they've got 2,600 residents, 3,000 residents or something. And so, I mean, you'd be doubling that at least. And then you get into, I don't even want to say it, but flood scenarios and stuff, it's a whole different animal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think your per resident cost annually for fire and EMS in that area is probably gonna be higher than average as well.
So it's something I think we need to be mindful of because that's the, you know, I'd rather us be prepared than surprised. Because surprised gets us into deep trouble. So can you make heads or tails of what we just asked you to do?
Yeah, you guys answered some big questions, actually. We have, I think, clarity on the facility situation. My take on it is clarity on the facility, look to invest in what we have here, maintain the high quality of service that fire already delivers, that kind of focus on our core functionality there. As far as targets go, 28, is that what are you comfortable with that? Kind of setting that as an initial target
For a levy? Sure.
Okay.
I mean, that 29 is when we start to run into deep trouble. We might find it that by the end of this year, though.
28 in a village, as far as what you think
Yeah.
we're gonna need.
What did we do the last time?
2.1.
2.1. I think we might need a little more than that.
Well, I think 2.1. So the last time we did 2.7 and it failed, not by a tremendous amount, but it failed. And then the second time it was put was 2.1, and that was just pretty much, you know, it allowed for us to buy an ambulance, replace the furnace, purchase an engine,
And increase salaries.
increase salaries. So we were able to do all of that. But other than that, it was just a status quo,
Right.
replacing equipment a little bit here and there, and it's spreading it out instead of, you know, jumping in with both feet on some of it. And that approach is fine. Like, I mean,
And we will want to get additional equipment. I mean, as far as expanding, you know, with growth and other issues, we probably are going to, I mean, right now you have two frontline, right?
2 frontline engines, 1 reserve.
And what are their ages again?
One's a 2007, one's a 2017, and then the other one is the new one. But the 2017 has like 50,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Just because we're running it all over the place.
Right. So,
And then we've got the new ambulance that will be in next year. I don't know if I told you gentlemen and ma'am, Ohio Township was committed to helping. They wanted to buy a new ambulance. They couldn't afford a new ambulance with their levy failing last year. We worked with them and they have ordered a remanufactured on a new chassis, which will hopefully be in sometime later summer, which will be a huge help.
okay. It'll be interesting to see how that works. But that said, as you try to figure that out, I think in the over the horizon, because the last time we did this was what year? 2000.
The last levy was in 15.
2015 was the last levy. So here we are in 2025. If you fit 26, as we look at that kind of a horizon, another 12, 15 year horizon, we're going to need another truck. We're going to need another ambulance in that amount of time. So, I mean, thinking about that projection, put those in there too in the wish list.
For sure. And you depreciate them out over time, even though that's not how the payment may actually work. At least it gives us something to plan on.
Right.
I know it can be a moving target, but as far as length of the levy, do you have a preference, or are you more concerned with just the actual qualitative aspects of what is in? Because what we can do is we can kind of back into it a little bit where we start looking at here's what we absolutely will need in a 5-year increment, for instance, from a capital and operational perspective. And then that can kind of help gauge. But otherwise, a 2.1 mil, I know you guys know this, but a 2.1 mil levy now is a lot different than it was 15 years ago.
Yep.
Well,
You know.
and if I remember correctly, the rules for fire levies are different than police or the others.
Yeah.
So there's some more limitations than.
They were kind to us on that front.
Yeah. Yes. I just want to say thanks to Eddie. Like he did the majority of this. I mean, we had a lot of conversations and discussions, but he did the bulk of after he got information from fiscal and the numbers, and like he did a bulk of putting it together, which I hugely appreciate. And I think
It looks great. I mean, the graphs, they're just perfect.
Photographs, yeah.
I love the colors. I love it all. I love it all.
Yeah, even the detail.
These are her, if you look at her charts, you're in the back, these are hers.
Mhm.
She has worked on these forever. And I commend her greatly that she keeps track of these numbers.
I think that
it's just kind of the neat. Everybody does a piece and it comes together, and it's not been that way
Yeah.
always here.
Her team.
you think, I think
Good, I have to adjust to giving compliments out when I come back into the township.
it's weird.
It is weird.
I'm not
It
used
doesn't
to it.
happen too much at Kelly Roofing. Good job, guys.
Way to go, guys. That roof looks, I love that roof line. Good work, guys.
It is good though, and I even looked up the 3 to 4% increase that you guys had for sort of cost of living or inflation, essentially, and that's right on target. But we've had some years at 8 and some years at a little lower at 2 and stuff. But
Okay, anything else, Eddie, on that one?
I think we're good. If Craig, if you feel comfortable with kind of setting out, I mean, the next time, what we can do is we now have enough to kind of get working on next year's, working with fiscal to kind of get next year's budget rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
You answered a lot of questions for us, and then we'll also
Did
obviously
we
as
answer a lot of questions or did we make a lot of questions for you?
actually, I think it was a net positive for sure. And we'll know closer to what Mr. Kelly was saying as far as that 3 or 4%. I mean, hopefully we're under it. If it runs a little hot, we'll have to just adjust and we'll update. But
yeah, it's an average though. It could run hot for a year or two and it could cool off and you'd still be
Yeah.
all right.
And the capital stuff, the apparatus, like ever since I kind of jumped into this with 2 feet needing a levy back in 2014, like I've kind of kept a running schedule of vehicles and apparatus replacement and large equipment. items. So there's a few more things on the equipment front that will have to be factored in, and things that constantly change. And the state changed something last year that went into effect for rope rescue equipment, and we just had to take a bunch of rope rescue equipment out of service that they end of lifed on us. It's like $6,000. So it's some of those pieces, but the apparatus, the engines and that stuff, like that's pretty easy to march out.
I didn't even get to rant about the state legislature. I mean, you guys did your work too well. You hemmed me in. I couldn't go on a rant. All right, so if we're okay with that, you have the
Yep.
answers you need. Why don't we march on with our waste fund? That's just so much more fun than, and we let Craig get out of here. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah, Claudia produces these running spreadsheets they work like exactly how my brain works. So it's like really helpful starting point for a lot of this stuff. All righty. So waste levy, this one's going to actually be a lot. I mean, I don't know. It actually wasn't as painful as I thought it could be, but this is a lot easier. So the solid waste and recycling services are provided through two levies. One was passed in 22 and another in 2012. Basically, the 2022 levy was authorized by Resolution 2022-017, provides residential waste and recycling. It was a renewal of 2.3 mils and an increase of 1 for a period of 5 years. That runs in parallel exactly with a contract through Rumpke, which will run for 5 years, ending collections February 29th of 2028. Similar situation here. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward as far as the revenue. The revenues are tend to be very flat around the 1.4 million mark. When it stops collecting, it just stops collecting. And ultimately, it just coincides with the contract ending as well. At the end of 27, which includes really 2 collections in early 28 or collections in through February of 28, we'll have a balance of about 210,000 just estimated right now. The way it goes right now, it's pretty clean because Rumpke provides us basically, here's what's going to cost to deliver services for 26, for 27, and that sort of thing. So we can line it up pretty evenly. Of course, the levy is time limited. Kind of gone over some of this. It's a consistent revenue stream, decent annual surplus, but it's balanced. So it really does not front load grow quite as much as some of the other ones, and a modest projected ending balance, of course, which is what happened the last time. So just looking for some perspective from you guys on how you'd like to proceed. There's a bunch of different options. There's the no levy option where individuals just kind of go and get their own service. There's pros and cons to each of these. There's the no levy, but of course the fees where the township might negotiate an agreement with a particular hauler, for instance. And there's a process through the ORC to work on that. And then there's kind of what we have right now, which is the voted levy approach, which again, to my knowledge, I think that Debbie and Claudia probably have some information on this too. We're pretty unique in that we offer that. It's rare that a governmental body does offer that service that way. One thing I'll say on the individual subscription, it's option number 1, not because this is any rank order or anything. It's just labeled that way for reference. One thing to keep in mind with that is you could conceivably have multiple haulers running multiple routes, different days of the week, for instance, which in a way it could be a little bit of extra wear and tear. Those are heavy vehicles, a little bit more chaotic. We've got a lot of rural roads. So if you have every day of your week covered by some sort of waste collection and you have 2-lane roads, I mean, it's just something to consider. And I know you guys probably are already sensitive to that. So just looking for direction from the board on how you'd like to proceed. Obviously, we're just had a police levy. We just spoke about the fire levy kind of coming up potentially in early 28. And so fire line or waste lines up similarly right into that vicinity as well. So just looking to get your perspective on how you want to juggle all of
It's
this.
interesting because to some degree, didn't it just give us an idea of how much we would gain? Because if you're at a 2.3 mils and we're generating about 1.4 million a year. So if we did a fire levy at 2.3 mils, we generate 1.4 million. I did that math without even taking my shoes off. Did you catch that? See, I'm part of the team now, man. But that said, that's 2.3 mils, and that's something I think, as we look at the community, I just would love to know from the community what their thoughts are on freeing up 2.3 mils that could be used for fire service. I mean, how important is this? Is this a need or a want?
You could, and you can get you can have your cake and eat it too, a little bit with the middle option. You can
Yeah.
still have continuity, you can still have clean roads, you can still have garbage collection more or less in the same day. But I was curious how that would actually look. The middle option, if we already get a contract on the residents, essentially behalf, but they still pay these directly to whatever trash people that we have the contract with, then we would negotiate the contract and it would be an opt-out thing similar to the electric
I
where
don't think so. I don't think it would be an opt-out. I think this would be the hauler of choice for this township and they would pay into that. But most of the communities like Anderson, how do you guys do it in Anderson?
Um, that's a really good question. I think it's a negotiated contract hauler rate, Gronky.
Right.
But we can investigate that more closely to see, because I get where you guys are going as far as you might have the preferred rate, but someone just really loves another service to pick up their garbage.
Mhm.
And they might just say, I'm just going to go with them for whatever reason. That may or may not still be an option, but I think Batavia takes this approach, for instance, of having the negotiated rate.
I think it is a little bit like, um, um, the energy thing. In that you get that better rate because you have X number of, it's the negotiating with, a large customer base
yeah.
that you can deliver. And that's where you get your savings. So I don't think that they're gonna want us to be, I think whoever that hauler is, they're gonna wanna know they've got, 7,000 homes that they're gonna be, focused on.
Have we ever done option two before ever? But we always had the levy.
The levy came in, what year?
2007, maybe?
I think it was 2007, 2005.
Just for fun. Before we got.
Yeah.
Here, that's when.
Yeah, in 2005, I moved out here and I think it was in place in 2005. So I think it was fairly new by then.
What we do before that?
I think it was a contract.
Yeah.
So if the rate were to be cheaper with whoever we negotiated a contract with just like the energy aggregation, chances are it would. So it would
Mhm.
probably be your best option unless, like you stated out, you really don't like Rumpke, you really don't like whoever we had a contract with. That said, I just was curious as how that transition would look, because right now everybody is used to just
Yep.
paying our taxes and getting garbage service. So if we transition over, are we able to take everybody and put them into the new, or do they have to individually call and line up their new service?
It's all of
Every
them.
single
It's
person.
on them. Yeah, it shifts. And so like if somebody doesn't get their garbage, we're still gonna get the calls here. Why didn't they come? Because people are gonna be used to that. Certainly that'll drop off over time because people will get used to, we don't do that anymore. But I mean, that's something I'd like to know. I mean, do we just put it back on the ballot when it comes time and just see if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and see, that's how we determine how the public feels, right?
Right. And that's what I'm trying to think about is how many people are going to be mad at me. How big of a disaster is it when you switch over and how's that going to actually look or not? But you're always going to have some people that aren't happy simply because it's a change. And I get it, but I'm just, honestly, I'm trying to think about what would be best for the residents and what would be the most seamless
Right.
transition for them and the most value as well.
Right. I keep thinking about the police levy and I'm just thinking, when you have something like the police that is really, really critical in people's lives. And then you've got something like a waste levy, which people are like, well, I could sign a contract for that. Certainly over in Amelia, that's the way it had been done prior to becoming part of Pierce. So this actually this system saved them money. Because the contract that they paid was higher. But there's certain members of the community that still come in here and complain that it's unconstitutional. So, you're right, you're gonna always have people that are gonna be upset. But I mean, it's something that crosses my mind because it does open up 2.3 mils that, could be strategically put toward the fire department.
In some residents, it's frankly going to be a better value,
Could be, yeah.
depending on the value of your home and how much taxes you pay. It's a percentage. It's not,
Right.
So if you pay Rumpke directly, some residents make it a better value out of a direct contract with Rumpke.
Right. Right. So it certainly, we don't have to answer the questions today, but these are some of the things I think that with this one, we're gonna have to really be cognizant of, particularly in the environment that we're in. And certainly if property taxes go away, this goes away. Because then we're gonna be focused on survival, and by that, I mean, being able to get the services that people absolutely need, fire and police, and the service department to some extent, but we're gonna be focused on those key services that people absolutely need. And this will fall into the category of a want, not a need.
Yeah, I would, potentially be maybe leaning a little to the in between right now, but I do think it's really important that we get some feedback from the residents. So
Coming out of to.
In theory, we're coming at them in 27, and then back again at them in 28 with the fire levy. So we're, back to back years where it's certainly would start to feel like they've always got their hands out. So one of them would have to be it's a renewal. It's not an increase. And I don't think it's going to be the fire.
yeah.
But anyway, it does give us some options. What do you, have we answered anything on this particular subject? I pontificated a little bit, but do you have any clarity?
I think we're getting close. I mean, what would help you? I mean, like with the fire, right? Like you guys kind of knocked one of the pins down just immediately. We're just gonna, we're gonna go with the current, status, kind of this principle. Like we've got what we've got. We got to make sure it stays A+. This one maybe not quite as much direction, but
Well, I mean, I think this one, if property taxes go away, this goes away. Done. There's just no question. Then I'd love to hear, to Nick's point, I would love to hear I'd like to get some feedback from the public. And see what their thoughts are on the matter, because I'm tempted to, just put it on the ballot and see what the residents say about it and have that's our polling, right?
Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea.
would you want on because with fire kind of targeting early 28 as well,
We're gonna have to go with this one earlier, right? Because we can't have it stepping on the fires.
Well, it also dies.
Oh, and also with, I guess with a little bit too.
I mean, if you want to play around, you could put it on the ballot this fall. And not to trigger until we run out.
It's not a bad idea, and just clear it up so we know exactly where we're going with the fire.
Right. Take the heat now.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a fire joke. Sorry.
It still works.
Take the garbage now.
Yeah.
Right? That's a little bit better. Still wasn't a good joke. I mean, it's something to kick around still. So if let's back up the calendar a little bit. We'd have to have the necessity, the resolution of necessity by July. So that, right. And then it would be, because that's when you got to get it on the ballot. So we would have to do something we'd have to start having that discussion, well, right now.
Fine. Well,
So if we started having that discussion in April, that would be appropriate.
Mhm. It sounds like I think that would be a pretty good plan of action at this point.
The last time in 16, for the way, for the way some. It'll be just a renewal.
Yeah, it'd have to be.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2.3 is up, I mean. So I read that correctly, right? It is 2.3. We raised it by 1 mil for the last time we renewed the
Yeah,
waste
so it's about
levy.
3.3 mils right now.
3.3? Okay.
Yeah, because it was a 2.3 renewal plus an increase of 1.
So I mean, if you're sitting there thinking, well, we've got 3.3 mils that we could free up for the fire department. Just saying.
It's not to bring up, this is an R problem, maybe not yours, but squeezing it in on the ballot right now too, that's another thing to consider, kind of where you want staff's energy focused, like if we want to go all in with we are fire or whatever it might be, that's also another approach maybe to consider, which is, if people feel really strongly about it, like, no, I'd rather have my waste service than fire. I mean, I doubt that, who knows if they, but-
My fear is that they would vote them both down.
Oh, sure. Oh,
Yeah, and if they vote the waste levy down, then we have clarity and we just move forward. And if they vote for it, then we have clarity too. I think it's one of the only ways to really know more certain how we proceed with the fire levy.
Because that if we put it out as a survey, we're gonna get a handful of answers
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
survey.
Oh, sure.
You put it on a ballot, it's right there in front of them. They can vote it up or they can vote it down.
It's
their
comprehensive and
choice.
So if
direct.
they vote it down, then we go to option 2.
Yep.
That answers the question.
You tell me.
Yeah.
Help me help you. So it's not so much we're out campaigning for it. We're just simply saying, you tell us what you want. This is literally a referendum. You choose.
Where is your priority?
I mean, that's why it's like, I don't foresee like the police levy, a robust, effort. It's just, we have to do a few things mechanically in order to get it to the ballot, if we choose to take it to the ballot. Yeah. So why don't we put that on the agenda for our April board meeting? For a quick discussion, not a long discussion, but a quick discussion. See if we still feel like, we can do a go, no go in April. We'll probably have another one of these meetings, right? So we can, I would recommend for these meetings, instead of having them as just a working session, just go ahead and put them on as a special meeting so that we can add things to the agenda as we need to. So just treat it like a regular meeting. We'll call it a work session. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
That gives us more flexibility to do,
Especially.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Claudia, you've got that look. It was brilliant. It was just the most brilliant word salad ever created. What did you miss?
Meetings as a special meeting.
Yeah.
Not a work session.
Yeah, we're just gonna call them a special meeting, and then we have the flexibility to do other things within them, and then we can still have the meat of the meeting.
Did
the
you do that
discussion.
fast on purpose?
No. But yeah, we can still have the meat of the meeting to discuss amongst the board.
Yeah.
And whatnot, so.
It still gives us that flexibility to do it. And yet, instead of having a 15-minute meeting before we have a full meeting, it's kind of like having second breakfast, right? You just have one breakfast, just make it real big. All right, anything else on waste levy? Did we answer anything on that? Okay, cool. See, this is what happens when we had a good administrator, you know what I'm saying?
He's a good administrator, that's for sure.
I didn't say that so he could hear it, I just said. Oh, I stole your glasses.
This guy's breakfast is over.
Well, he should. Keeps us out of trouble. He does need a vacation. He also needs a oh, we did that last meeting, didn't we? Okay. All right, so we've done the waste fund. So open floor discussion, any presentations, hearing none, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford.
Yes.
And Mr. Freeman.
Yes. All right, we are out. Thank you, guys.
You.
That is business right there, gents.